Superman 3 is generally regarded as a big drop in quality from the first two Superman films, an assessment I totally agree with, and among the many reasons for its poor performance, many people cite the casting of Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor's celebrity meant that the production was warped in ways that it might not otherwise have been. One result was that it was much more a comedy than an adventure, although the comedy is not often very funny. The other result was that the movie presents two parallel plots, one for Superman and one for Gus Gorman, Richard Pryor's character, and the need to tie those two plots together results in what I think is perhaps unintentionally the funniest line of dialogue in the film, one that I've never heard anyone else mention. But that comes at the end. I'm Tony Frazier, author, blogger, near genius, and this is Hero Go Home presents Superman 3, More Time Trouble. The story goes that plans for Superman 3 changed completely when Richard Pryor was cast. If you search around online, you can find what was supposedly co-producer Ilya Salkind's first idea for a Superman 3 story, featuring Brainiac, Supergirl, and Mr. Mxyzptlk. It sounds like it would have been an even worse film than what we got, so in one sense, perhaps we should all thank our lucky stars that they did get Pryor. But it's not as if there was no precedent for casting big stars in a film like this. The Batman TV series in 1966 set the template that was later followed by the Batman movies in the late 1980s. Cast your big stars as villains or in cameos. This was even the approach that the first Superman film took. The two biggest stars in the film were Marlon Brando and Gene Hackman. Hackman played the scenery-chewing villain Lex Luthor, and Brando has an extended cameo before being killed off early in the film. But for whatever reasons, they did not take either approach with Richard Pryor. Instead, he was made into a sort of villain, sort of protagonist whose story runs parallel to that of Superman. Here's Superman's storyline. Clark Kent goes back to Smallville for a class reunion where he kindles a new relationship with an old acquaintance, divorced single mother Lana Lang. Evil business magnate Ross Webster wants to corner the world's oil market but realizes he has to get rid of Superman first. So he has some fake kryptonite made up to kill Superman, but it doesn't work. Instead, it just turns him evil. So evil that he is seduced by Webster's mistress to help out with the oil scheme. But then Lana Lang's son begs for Superman to get better, which causes Superman's good and bad sides to separate and battle it out in a junkyard. The good side wins just in time to stop Webster's new supercomputer from destroying the world or whatever. Here's Gus Gorman's storyline. Gus's unemployment runs out, so he takes a computer programming class and discovers he's a natural at it. He uses his expertise to embezzle a ton of money from the company he works for, but is caught and forced to help his evil boss Ross Webster in a plot to control the world's oil market. In exchange, Gus gets Webster to build a supercomputer that he has designed. The computer goes out of control, and though Gus tries valiantly to stop it, Superman has to save the day. Taken individually, the plots aren't horrible. But a movie telling the story this way doesn't tell one story and then the other. It intercuts, going back and forth between them, which will create a number of interesting problems. Let's go back over the film and see how the two plots interweave. The film opens with Gus Gorman being told his unemployment has run out, after which he sees an ad on a matchbook about learning to program computers. Then come the opening credits and our first attempt to connect the two storylines. The credit sequence is a long series of slapstick gags precipitated by this woman, who is the mistress of eventual villain Ross Webster. When the sequence ends, we pan up to the window of a data processing school where Gus Gorman demonstrates a magical ability to program computers. Literally magical. He does something the instructor says is impossible and claims he has no idea how he did it. Next, we jump to Perry White's office in the Daily Planet, which is happening immediately after the preceding scene. We know this because Jimmy Olsen still has the same mustard stain on his lapel, and Perry White references the rescue Superman just performed in the opening credits as having just happened. We learn two things in this scene. Lois announces she's leaving immediately for Bermuda for a vacation, and Clark announces he is leaving immediately to go to Smallville for a class reunion. Back to Gus, where he's getting his first paycheck from Websco Industries. At least a week has passed because Gus has finished his computer training, gotten a job, and is now getting paid for his first week of work. Gus's co-worker mentions half cents floating around in the computer somewhere, unclaimed, giving Gus an idea. Gus programs the Websco mainframe to route all half cents to him. Back to Clark, who is on a bus to Smallville with Jimmy Olsen. They stop for a chemical plant fire where Jimmy Olsen uses his incredible ninja stealth techniques to sneak closer to the fire. Superman uses his super cold breath to freeze a lake and put out the fire. But what you may not notice about the scene is that this is a really slow bus. This is happening after that scene with Gus at his company, remember, which was at least a week after the scene in Perry's office. Clark gets to Smallville, where he is reunited with the beautiful Lana Lang, and sparks fly as they dance. And now back to Gus, who is getting his next paycheck, so another week has gone by. And remember that really slow bus? Turns out it was even slower than we thought, because after Gus gets his second paycheck and the profits from his embezzling scheme, here are Clark and Lana cleaning up the morning after the reunion dance, which means the bus took more like 2 weeks to get there. So Gus's embezzling is detected almost immediately, and he is blackmailed into helping Ross Webster corner the coffee market. To that end, he is sent to Smallville to use the computer at a subsidiary of Websco called Wheat King. Gus runs into Clark, who is just leaving to go on a picnic with Lana and her son, who is almost killed by combine harvesters run by, guess who, Wheat King, because everything's connected. And just as an aside, even if his demeanor and glasses keep you from thinking Clark is Superman, wouldn't these weird streaks in his hair make you wonder even a little bit? So Gus heads to Wheat King at night, dressed in flamboyantly small-town clothes, and persuades Clark's old classmate and rival for Lana's affections, Brad, to let him in. Then he hacks into the Wheat King computer, which requires 2 keys inserted simultaneously as if Gus were launching nuclear missiles rather than entering wheat data. Then Gus reprograms the weather satellite to create a massive storm in Colombia in order to destroy the coffee crop, which also catches the 2 winners of the Daily Planet trip to South America because this movie is desperate to tie everything together. Also, there's a montage of computers around the country doing wacky things, mainly notable for the fact that a man shoves a grapefruit into his wife's face after seeing their Bloomingdale's bill. That moment really stands out for a lot of online reviewers, although nobody ever mentions where it came from. Apparently, someone on the production team thought this famous moment from the 1931 Cagney picture, The Public Enemy, was ripe for comedy. Anyway, Webster is not happy that Superman stopped the hurricane before it could have its desired effect, but the operation proves that Gus can do magic with computers. So Webster decides to try to corner the world's oil market instead, but first he needs Gus to use the computer to scan the area of space where Krypton was, run a spectrographic analysis of the debris to find the formula for kryptonite with one small substitution, and then have some synthesized so he can kill Superman with it. Meanwhile, Clark has finally returned to Metropolis after 3 weeks, a month? When Lana calls him up with a problem. Her son Ricky has promised that Superman will attend his birthday party. Clark promises that Superman will be there, to which Lana replies,
"But Clark,
Yeah.
you're the best."
Webster's labs finish synthesizing the fake kryptonite, let's just call it Craptonite, just in time for Gus to show up in Smallville and do a bad Patton impersonation before presenting the deadly rock to Superman. Only the rock isn't so deadly. Gus has to call his boss and talk about
The secret recipe in that chicken in the bucket.
Which is funny because elsewhere in the movie we've seen very obvious product placements for KFC. But you can't say that The Rock had no effect because Superman suddenly becomes kind of creepy stalkery with Lana. Also, just to be dickish, Superman straightens out the Leaning Tower of Pisa and blows out the Olympic torch. Webster figures out that the change in Superman must be due to the Kryptonite and figures the coast is clear. He has Gus relay orders to all of the oil tankers to sail to the middle of the ocean and just sit there. Also to stop all the oil pumps in the world. But before Gus sets the plan in motion, he makes Webster promise to build a supercomputer more advanced than anything else in the world that he has designed on various cigarette wrappers and bar napkins in his spare time. One fly in the ointment, one tanker captain refuses to follow his orders, so Lorelei is sent to seduce Superman into stopping that tanker, which he does by causing a massive oil spill. As his reward, he returns to the rooftop ski chalet to get laid, and notice the subtle symbolism of Lorelei's apple and serpent necklace. So while Webster's men are building the supercomputer in what looks like it might be the Grand Canyon but is actually Glen Canyon upriver from it, Superman hits his crisis point. Lana and Ricky move to Metropolis to find Superman drunk in a bar, flicking nuts like bullets. He's unshaven and his uniform is filthy, and those streaks in his hair are even more pronounced. Ricky proclaims his belief that Superman isn't bad, just sick, so Superman flies to a junkyard and fights the evil out of himself, like you do. Now good again, Superman cleans up the oil spill he caused, then follows a video message from Webster to the underground lair where Gus's supercomputer has been completed. He first has to fight through missile defenses that play like a video game because Atari literally did the computer animation for this sequence. But the computer itself proves tougher, and even though Gus switches sides at the last moment to save Superman, he still has to flee and return with some of the acid stuff from the chemical plant fire earlier. Safe at room temperature, super volatile when heated. The computer doesn't recognize the danger until it's too late, and the day is saved. Superman later explains his ruse to Gus like this.
Well, those defenses are pretty good as long as the machine doesn't know it's in trouble.
Which is exactly the opposite of the way it worked. The defenses were only good as long as the machine knew it was in trouble. Superman was only able to beat it by introducing a danger it was unaware of. Anyway, Superman makes a diamond out of coal, leaves Gus at the coal mine, and gives the diamond to Lana as Clark Kent. Lois returns from her vacation to discover that Perry White has a new secretary, and it just happens to be the girl from back home that Clark seems to have a thing for. So let's look at those two timelines again. Superman's timeline is relatively straightforward. Depending on how long that evil bit in the middle plays out, this story could take anywhere from a few days to a couple of weeks. But Gus's story takes longer, and where Superman's story has some wiggle room in the middle, Gus's story has several places where more time is needed. Depending on how long it takes to build the supercomputer, which coincides with evil Superman reaching his crisis point, his story would take several weeks to a couple of months to play out. But because the two stories have to play in parallel, they had to fudge one storyline or another, which is how we get to the unintentionally hilarious part that no one ever notices. When we return to Perry's office at the end, he says,
I've got to hand it to you. Who else could turn a 3-week vacation into a front-page story that's going to blow the lid off of corruption in the Caribbean?
3 weeks. Okay, give me a second because I'm going to try to do all this in one breath. Gus finished his computer training, got a job, got his first paycheck, embezzled some money that he got in his second paycheck, got caught, traveled to Smallville, hacked into a weather satellite to cause a hurricane, figured out the chemical composition of kryptonite, had some chemically synthesized, presented it to Superman, did another hack to take over the world's oil supply, all while designing the world's most advanced supercomputer in his spare time, built that supercomputer in a special underground base, and then helped destroy it and ended up stranded at a coal mine. All in 3 weeks, and all from a guy who just previous to this thought working at Burger King was too complicated because of all the special orders.
Like, hold the lettuce, hold the ketchup. Can I have some sauce, please? I don't want any sauce. 2 buns, no buns, some cheese, no cheese.
3 weeks. And that's it for me. If you have anything you want to add to this, please tell me in the comments below. If you like this video, please share it with your friends. I still have a few more video ideas I plan to make in the next few weeks, so what the heck, if you want to see more, hit the subscribe button as well. For more commentary on Superman 3 as well as other movies and comic books, visit my site at herogohome.com. I'm Tony Frazier, and for all of us here at Hero Go Home, which is just me actually, thank you for watching, and see you next time.